Hello, everyone. Welcome to the African Technology Authors and Speakers Forum. The aim of this forum is to equip young South African people who are aspiring speakers or writers, especially in the technology space, to learn the lessons that we older people have learned over the years that can hopefully equip you to get onto the speaking and writing circuit much faster. You have so much to give. Pay it forward. Share your expertise and your views, but don't make the mistakes that we've made over the years. I'm very happy to have with us today Theo Watson. I've had a number of events with him, wonderful person, and I enjoy the events that we do together. Theo is a South African attorney. He is currently the Senior Corporate Counsel of Microsoft in South Africa, and he supports the Central and Eastern European region as well as the Middle East and Africa. It doesn't sound like an easy peasy job. Theo, welcome. Maybe just kick it off and tell us more about you that I haven't covered in this short little intro.
So, Johan, first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. I mean, I absolutely love the sense of paying it forward. So I hope I will be able to add to that. In terms of just giving a little bit of a background from my side, I've been an attorney for just over 25 years. I practiced for about 6 or 7 years, and one of my clients at the time then sort of hunted me down and said, don't I want to go and join them? They were listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange at that point in time, and it's quite an interesting venture. I ended up spending a lot of time floating around Africa. They had a lot of mining opportunities and things like that. So I left practice, joined this mining operation that was listed in Toronto, got to understand a little about listed companies and investor relations and how to pitch something, how to sort of call people to the table and get things done. With them I moved across to the UK. I lived in the UK for a couple of years, and then I came back to South Africa and joined up with Microsoft. And I must say, to the theme of what we're discussing, Microsoft has certainly presented me with an opportunity second to none to be able to talk to people, to get engaged and present and really just pull people into the world of technology. So I hope that sort of sets the scene a little bit around who I am.
Absolutely, Theo. The area of ethics, of legality, of regulation is so important. That's the conversations you and I have had on panels in the last few months. So, but it's interesting that obviously as a lawyer, you've joined the legal side of Microsoft. How did it happen that you got the job with Microsoft?
Well, it was fairly interesting. And as I said, I was living in London. I came back to South Africa. Visas and things expire, and I was looking for an opportunity. It was a little bit of luck. I was speaking to some of my friends at the time at the bigger law firms, and I was floating around. And it just so happened that one of my friends at Edward Nathan turned around and said, "We just got a request from Microsoft. They're looking for an attorney who knows something about Africa, and I know that you've done a ton of work in Africa over the last sort of 8-9 years at that point in time." I said, "Sure, let me give them a bit of a bash." Put in a CV, sent it through, and then it took around I think it was about 4 or 5 months, and if I recall, something like 11 interviews, give or take, before I finally got the opportunity and I joined up with Microsoft.
Amazing.
And that was nearly 15 years ago. So, quite a lot of water under the bridge.
Absolutely. It always is interesting if people work at a company for so long. Either they don't have ambition, which I know is not the case with you, or it is a great company and a great culture and there's space for growing. And Microsoft and you and the colleagues that I've worked with, what an incredible company, Theo. So how did you get into speaking? Obviously, there's a lot of internal presentations, I would assume, at Microsoft, but also the conference scene, the kind of webinars or panels, etc. How did you get into it, and what was that journey for you? Was it a natural journey, or was it freaky and you had to get over yourself in a way?
I love the question. There's a lot of history to this question, so bear with me. So I'll take you through a little bit of the history. When I left the army, I'm old enough to have done military service in South Africa. My father sort of took me to university, and we did some tests, and we sat with these really sort of fancy doctors and professors who could sort of say, from an aptitude perspective, this is what you need to do. And I was very much aiming at something creative. And my father, having studied law, said, "No, you've got to go study law." And I clearly remember saying to the doctor at the time, Theo should go and study law. And this lovely doctor turned around and said, But look at this pie chart. If you look at Theo's aptitudes, he's sitting at the sort of 11, 12, 1 p.m. in the pie chart. The law is just down on the other side. He can't stand up in front of people and speak. And I remember listening to that and thinking, that's absolutely right. I don't like speaking to people. I get really nervous and all bungled up. So that's where it all started. And of course, I took to law, and I seemed to be really good on the drafting side of things. I was forced in my first year of articles to go and do a trial. The client hadn't made the payments, the advocate pulled out, and I was standing at court and I said, okay, I'll do the thing. So, I got up with absolutely no experience, and I started, examination in chief and cross-examination and all these kinds of things. And that was my real first introduction, as a very young candidate attorney to the world of, in inverted commas, public speaking. I then ended up doing a lot more of that. I loved the trial work. I really enjoyed being in court and arguing, etc. And, when I left law, that obviously got lost and left behind. But, I mentioned earlier that we were involved in investor relations. You've got to be able to talk to people that you are trying to secure funding from as you want to grow your listed companies and things like that. So you start to sort of go on that investor relations trails and trials. Whether I was speaking in Canada or speaking to people in China, this is something that I started to do as part of the job when I was living in London. When I came to Microsoft, again, I hadn't had any ideas of doing public speaking. It was really more about being an attorney. What can I draft? What can I negotiate? And it fell to me as the attorney to do a bunch of compliance work. And the first company meeting that I was invited to, they said, well, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to have another company meeting, and you're the compliance lead because you're the attorney, and you're going to have to talk to us about compliance. And I looked at this, and there were about 600 people in the room, I think, if I recall, give or take. And I said, I don't know what to do. And I was absolutely broken with nerves. I'd never spoken to so many people before. But yeah, it wasn't a bad experience. I recall that we still had I think it was in July, we were doing July handicap as the theme. And I remember one marketing lady by the name of Tracy still had one of those long crops. It was my turn to talk, and I got up and I took the crop and I whipped the crop in the air and I said, right, time for some compliance, folks. And everyone laughed. And the minute that sort of laughter came across and they enjoyed the humor, I relaxed and I could do the presentation that I need to do, which was really extremely short. I think it was something like 4 or 5 minutes. But again, this massive audience of about 500, 600 people that you're talking to, and me holding the crop and making people laugh. That was the start of my journey in terms of, hang on, this is actually a lot of fun. You're connecting with people, you're transferring information, knowledge, and you're connecting with people. And I sort of just fell into the trap of absolutely enjoying it.
I think very few people are born speakers, natural speakers, maybe a Steve Jobs or somebody like that. You mentioned your aptitude test in high school. I was as a much younger person. I wanted to ask you about mapping your unique personality and style to public speaking, because the temptation is to be a Steve Jobs or an Elon Musk or a Nelson Mandela or a Trevor Noah or somebody like that. I just can't do it. I'm just me, and I continue growing and continue getting better at it, hopefully. But there's almost like a place in our lives, I think, Theo, where it clicks that I'm okay as I am, as imperfect as I am. If the audience doesn't like it, it's one of those things, but I can relax. I'm obviously going to be always extremely nervous, but because I'm just me and I'm having a conversation, it's a bit better. Did you find that switch somewhere as well, and how did that impact you?
Yeah, absolutely. You've outlined something very, very similar to what I've experienced. When you start doing anything, so whether you are programming, whether you are developing technology, writing some kind of pleadings for the court or drafting a contract, I'll go back to what I'd done 10 years ago, and it's like, I can see a different style, so I think there's an automatic growth in absolutely everything that we do. But I think at the core of it, you need to be true to yourself. In other words, this is who I am. One of the things that's true to me is I always like to joke a little bit, but at the same time, I like to be creative. So I like to bring humor and creativity into it, because I think that's what resonates with people. When I'm talking to folks and I'm making some kind of sort of snippy remark and they're enjoying that, that energizes me. And it's that sort of I'm looking for in who I am. And I'm hoping that I can always do that. I think the one sort of area where I might sort of take a slightly different sort of tack to what it is that you're referring to is that sometimes there's an audience that is different. You've got to recognize the audience that you're speaking to. I still think you need to stay true to yourself, but recognize that audiences are different. Sometimes you're dealing with professionals. Sometimes you're dealing with a lay person. Sometimes you're dealing with 20 people. Sometimes you're dealing with 200 people. So there is a degree to which you have to adapt in order to be able to sort of connect with the particular audience that you're speaking to. But outside of that, I think the core of staying true to who you are, if you're a serious person or if you're a philosophical person or whatever it might be, I think it's important that you stay true to yourself in those themes.
Absolutely. And, the times I've seen you speak or did conferences with you, Theo, or, events, and the guy that I have coffee with, it's the same guy. I love that. You're authentic. And you are right. And it takes wisdom and it takes experience to pivot to the audience. I remember the last time we did a conversation and a panel together. The previous session, if I remember correctly, was running late. And we were waiting in the hall and people were slowly coming in. And you had to almost like get the vibe going. And you did great. You were more MC and comedian in a way than speaker. But you were you. It wasn't a different guy than the guy I have coffee with. So, and here's now a tricky question, and you've alluded to some of it already, but what would you tell the Theo of 20 years ago? What are the things that you know now that you wish you knew back then? There's probably 4 hours.
Yeah, I think it's two things, and we're circling around the same theme, I think, Johan. When I think about it, the first thing is be confident. Just go out there, be confident. Recognize that you are talented in what it is that you're doing. The fact that people reach out to you already should tell you that you have a better standing than most. So get out there and acknowledge that and let that build your confidence. And the second thing, which again is thematically what we've been addressing, which is be authentically you. If and it doesn't matter. I mean, I sit in many a boardroom or a meeting, and you don't need to go off and swear like a sailor, but people want to see authentic you. That is what they're after, and I think that's what connects us. Is I don't have to pretend to be something else. We have innate abilities as humans. When people are talking nonsense to us, when they're giving us that BS, we're not interested. But when the guy on the stage is talking and he's authentic and he's real and he can say, man, I'm struggling. We went through these difficulties, we went through these hard times, we had these great times. That is what people are looking for, that connection. And I think being authentic creates that connection.
Absolutely. I want to ask you a bit about representation. And I must say, what I do appreciate about the Microsoft events I've gone to and where you've been involved with your team, Theo, there's always good representation from a gender point of view, an ethnicity point of view, but it is a struggle for a lot of conference organizers. I hate a lot of these tech conferences where I speak, where the representation of true African voices, female voices, are very lowly represented. And there are a number of reasons. A lot of conference organizers will say they're reaching out to women, they're just not coming back to them. It could be culturally, they were raised in a way of, as a woman, I don't have a voice, I can't speak up. But what can you and I as men do, and especially as bleak-looking Africans, because we are Africans, to encourage our fellow South Africans and Africans, and especially our female friends and colleagues, to speak up at conferences? Because, as you know, there are incredibly smart and experienced women in the tech space. I mean, they should just be speaking at every conference. But what can you and I and people like us do to help them to get out there and to start speaking more?
Yeah, so look, I think it's a tough question because it covers such a broad spectrum. So first of all, it's about organizations, it's about the speaking platforms. What are these folks going to do to find the right speakers? I think that's difficult because there is, let's call it, there's a dearth of opportunity in that space. I'll share a small sort of experience that I've had, and I'm happy that it wasn't 100% me. It's never 100% me, but I have a colleague. She was particularly nervous around public speaking. We had an opportunity a couple of years ago, huge conference, and I said, let's share the stage. And there were two events, one after the other. And at the first event, she was incredibly nervous. I could see that she was nervous, but we'd worked on the decks, we'd work on the presentation, and I did a lot of encouraging. So I encouraged her. And, when we had the second event, the follow-on event, we trimmed the decks down, we fixed up the little areas, and I continue to support her from a confidence perspective to say, you've done fantastically well. And, I compared the first event at which she spoke to the second event, and it was already better. So I think that there is that mentorship that we can provide. At the same time, I don't want to take all the kudos. I mean, this girl worked damn hard to sort of put herself out there and take on this enormous task. And I can tell you, sort of a year and a half, 2 years on, the speaking that she's doing is absolutely fantastic, and it goes back to that sort of me taking the crop from Tracy on my first day there at Microsoft, and being pushed into it, and then getting that support and that. She's done phenomenally well. So I think it's that sort of combined scenario of you've got to be it yourself. Not everyone is going to be a speaker. We just have to accept. Not everyone's going to have the knowledge. We've got to accept that. But where those people do have, and we come across them, can we mentor them? Can we do, like what you're doing here today, Johan? What can we do to assist? And whether it is 5% or 55% or whatever is in between to help folks in that space, we've got to do that.
I like that, Theo. It's sometimes just recognizing that innate talent in a colleague or a friend and telling them, I believe in you. Let's do this together. I'll give you the few tips. I'll connect you with some people. People just need, I think a lot of us have grown up not believing in ourselves because of our parents, the schools we went to, and so forth. And it's such a beautiful human need to be loved and accepted and encouraged. So I think that's definitely something we can all do, Theo.
Couldn't agree more.
Before we end, Theo Watson's ambition for the next 5 or 10 years? Well, hopefully it's not to die, because that's probably that. Well, that you can't.
I want to retire extremely wealthy and stop working so hard. The jokes aside, I've got at least another 10 years. So, Johan, it's difficult. I think the world, I've been having a lot of philosophical debates, not just at Microsoft and from a technology and AI perspective that you and I share, which is changing so rapidly. But we're sitting in an incredibly interesting and I think sometimes very troubling times. We look around the world, it feels like the world is more fractured than it's been before. So this is making planning difficult. So the fractured nature, I think, of what we face is tough. Trying to find common ground with people in that fractured instance is really what I think is what I'm looking to try and do. Microsoft is this fantastic platform that allows for it. Technology is this fantastic platform. Here you and I are sitting on a Zoom call, and you're going to upload this to YouTube and who knows where else. So I think technology represents an incredible opportunity for us to reach out to people, to share that authenticity that I spoke about earlier. So, in terms of where I want to go, I certainly am hoping I can continue with Microsoft. It's an incredibly interesting company. It is a leading edge company. So I'm very privileged to be part of Microsoft at this sort of point in history. I'm hoping that the platform that Microsoft gives me will allow me to continue to grow. This is the one thing that I love about Microsoft and its culture. It says, go and do whatever you need to do. It's a double-edged sword. If you don't deliver, we're really going to take it out on you. But if you want to, we will provide you with that platform to go and grow, not just the company, but yourself. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where we can grow, particularly in the artificial intelligence space. It's been troubling for me to hear rhetoric that suggests that there's going to be a pullback around regulation in some areas of the world in respect of AI. You and I have shared this particular passion around ethics and responsible AI. So, it's worrisome in terms of perhaps the opportunity to grow AI. Folks will forget about the regulation side of it, the ethical and responsible side of it. So hopefully I will be able to double down on that and leave my mark, whether it's here in South Africa, the rest of Africa, or anywhere else Microsoft might send me. So that really would be my focus over the immediate future. And then just to continue to be authentically myself. What you don't want to do is stress yourself out trying to sort of be something that you're not. So, yeah, those are the broad philosophical areas that I'm going to be focusing, I guess, over the next couple of years.
It's such a lovely opportunity to speak with you. I look forward to many future events, whether it's with Microsoft or other platforms. There's a lot that you shared that I think a lot of our aspiring speakers will benefit from, and I thank you for that. Thank you for your time. Theo Watson, attorney, corporate counsel at Microsoft South Africa, speaking in his personal capacity. Theo, it was a wonderful privilege, and I wish you well. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Johan. And honestly, the privilege is mine, and I really hope the message gets out there. And to the extent that we can collaborate further on this or anything else, I really look forward to supporting. So thank you again for the opportunity.